Hello, footy fans, and welcome back to the Chip and Chase podcast on this Wednesday evening. So you know what that means. We're ready to rip and tear into everything that was from round 23 of the Supercoach season, looking ahead to round 24 of the NRL Supercoach season. Once again, this one is up on YouTube, so if you're listening on an audio platform, head over to the YouTube channel. Better way to engage with me and engage with the content that we have displayed on the screen. It's just better all around. It's just a better experience. Get around it. For those of you who are listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, I should say, you guys can see what we have up on screen at the moment, which of course includes how we went in round 23. So round 23, a score of 1,255. Pretty good score for the week. Moved us up 139 ranks into a season rank of 5,541 overall. Pretty happy with that. As I said, happy to be getting green arrows regardless. It was a little bit scary, you know, seeing how Tom Trbojevic scored the way he did. And not only him, especially, you know, coming into the rest of the games in this season, it's pretty scary. He's definitely not a player I can get to, someone I'm going to have to anti-pod. And it's going to be hard to watch Manly games without owning him. But at least we'll manage to get a few spots up regardless. You know, there's only 4 weeks left of the season now, so not sure how much higher my rank can get. I'd like to get it to a top 2,000 is probably my goal now. I reckon I can still get top 1,000. Need things to fall my way, of course. Running quite thin on trades. Only got the 2 remaining. We will be using one this week. Originally we wanted to keep these, but they were for emergencies, and I've got a decently sized emergency to fix up in my team. But yeah, 1,255 meant we've got a total score at the moment of 26,080. So, you know, you can base your scores on that and my rank on that, and you can see how far away you are from there. But let's get into the actual team. I'm also a bit under the weather today, guys, so I'm going to try and do this one a little bit quicker. Let's get through to my team. In the hooker position, Harry Grant, only 39 points. A little bit worrying. I think he did get a try assist. No, might not have been try assist. It might have been. Line break assist, try assist taken away from him, I think. Ended up basing 40. Had a couple of negative stats. Brought him down to 39 points. Not the best from someone of his caliber, but, you know, the week before he went 100 plus, so we'll take it. Jake Simpkin did not play. Adam Fanua-Blake, 68 points. Loved that. Jack DeBellin, 44. Originally was on 51 and downgraded, so a little bit disappointing there. But we had to play him with the sort of matchups that we had. This is the big thing, I guess, about why I'm happy with green arrows, regardless how big and small they were. You know, it was going to be a very hard week with my Roosters players in the bye, which, you know, in fairness, I'm not the only one with those Roosters players out. But it's good that I had the depth that I could cover that and actually move up the ranks pretty well. Jack DeBellin scoring 44 points. Look, we'll take it. We probably won't look to play him too much more for the rest of the season unless injury or suspension strikes. But yeah, 44 points. On the bench, Terrell May obviously didn't play. And Josh Curran, he got a reserve tag and got 62 points as one of our reserves. Love that from him. Second row position, 65 from David Fafita and 65 from Nikita. Homole Olakawatu, good to see him back into the side after his suspension. Pretty happy with those 2 scores. Britton Nikita, 96. Even happier with that. Love to see that. As opposed for my bench second row forwards, which none of them played. So no Angus Crichton, no Beau Fermor, and of course, no Viliami Fafita. The halfback position, 86 points from Nathan Cleary. This is a score that we're pretty darn happy with because a lot of people captained Cleary. So we didn't want him to go massive because we had the depth to go somewhere else, which our captain did go quite good. And if you tuned into last week's podcast, you should know who that is. But 86 points from Cleary as our loop. We didn't end up looping him, as our vice captain, which we didn't end up looping for obvious reasons. Sam Walker, our backup halfback, didn't play. 5'8", bit sad here. Only 38 points from Jaden Campbell. Titans, they just didn't show up for this one against the Sharkies. So points were very hard to come by. Actually, they didn't score a single point, so they were very, very hard to come by. 38 points, not ideal, but, you know, I still think he's probably the best 5'8" to hold for the run home or to own for the run home. So pretty certain we'll be keeping him, but there is something that I have been toying with. I don't think we'll do it, but we will mention it when we get to the trade section of the podcast. Jai Gray, 47 from him. He keeps looking good. This one was against Melbourne. Someone I'll be looking to play this week. I believe the Rabbitohs have the Tigers. So yeah, definitely someone I'll be looking to play this week when he's punching out scores that good. Didn't play him, didn't get the reserve on him, but not a bad score for a player against Melbourne. Into our centre wingers, Valentine Holmes 56 when the Broncos went on a massive run in that second half and made the Cowboys look a bit silly. So not a bad score to have. 88 Jesse Ramian, little bit disappointing. I mean, it's not. It's a really good score, but it's disappointing from the sense that he was sin-binned in this one. So that would have been our second 100-plus score from Jesse Ramian this season. Not to be, but hey, that's Supercoach. At least he pulled out an 88 that, again, not many people own. 62 from Ruben Garrick, really good with that. Greg Marju, only 38. The Knights just seem to only go to the right-hand side, and they favoured Fletcher Sharp, who pulled up with 4 tries in this game. So pretty disappointing that. But again, 38 points in base. Surely the Knights have to go left at some point, and he'll get some attacking stats. So we'll have to see. As opposed for our bench centre wings, Dominic Young did not play. 94 points from Kaila Ito, 21 points from Casey McLean, which, you know, both of those players had reserve tags on them. Opposite ends of the spectrum there. Happy with the 94 from Ito. Not too happy with the 21 from McLean, but he's pretty highly owned, and I assume most people played him as well. What is he owned at? He's only in 17% of teams as well. I thought he'd be a little bit higher than that. But yeah, look, you live with that. Here's the big one, of course. Callum Ponga, as our captain, scored 124, doubled to 248 points. Saved our week, went right down to the last game, and yeah, got us a really good score there. So really happy with that. And Reece Walsh, 85 points against the Cowboys as well, was really good in a game that I didn't think the Broncos had much hope. But he has gone down injured, expected to miss 3 to 4 weeks, which is essentially the rest of the season. Not someone I'm going to be holding in that position. But that wraps us up for how the team went. Before we get into trades, let's do a quick run through of the team lists for round 24. As I said, going to be a quick podcast this time. I just have a lot to do, and I'm not in the best shape at the moment, guys. So we'll try and run through this quite quickly. All right, round 24 team list, starting with the Penrith Panthers. At the moment, they've still got Dane Laurie named, as well as Lindsay Smith named at starting front row and fullback respectively. But I have heard word that Dylan Edwards and James Fisher-Harris, who were included in the extended bench, will both play this game. So expect that to change before game day. That, of course, being tomorrow's game, the Thursday game. So big ones there. Not sure what it means Supercoach-wise. If you're a Dane Laurie owner, tough for you. If you wanted to go really poll, you could go with Dylan Edwards. But against the Storm, not for me. Without goal kicking, not for me. At his price, not for me. But hey, there's stranger things out there. For the Storm, not a whole lot going on here. Eli Katoa returns to the side, meaning he goes back in the second row. Trent Liero to lock forward. Nelson goes into starting front rower, and Tui Kamikamitha goes back to the bench. But not massive Supercoach implications there. A really welcome return for Katoa for all of you who still own. I never owned, so tough jig for me, but hey, that's what Supercoach is. Next up, the Manly Seagulls take on the New Zealand Warriors. For the Seagulls, they've kept a exact same side, is it? Oh no, Josh Alioi returns at front row, which moves Nathan Brown back to the bench and Toa Sipley out. That's not really Supercoach relevant, though. For the Warriors, few changes here. Adam Pompey returns in the centres. Tough for Ali Leitao owners. I believe it's actually a head knock he's out with. I don't think he was necessarily dropped. He may have been. We don't really know. But the head knock is the reason he is out. But Pompey back in the side is really good. A, for goal kicking, but they also welcome Sean Johnson back, who you'd assume would be their first choice goal kicker. But both of them strike it pretty well. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, he's back in the centres. Marcelo Montoya also back onto the wing with Ed Corsi dropping out. So a near full strength Warriors side. Luke Metcalf also included in the reserves. So would like to see him back in the NRL. Hopefully that they can make that happen. The only massive out from their side is Tohu Harris, who's out for the season. So pretty full strength Warriors side, but that hasn't really mattered this season. They've been quite poor. Heading into the Roosters and Eels up next. Roosters, of course, coming off the bye, have named a pretty solid team. Doesn't really look like any changes there. Joey Manu, of course, back. Lindsay Collins back after that head knock. No Jared Warrior-Hargreaves. I thought Jared was due back this week, but this must be his last week of the suspension because he's not included in the reserves either. So that was a bit interesting, but maybe that's something for Terrell May owners like myself. I'm not sure. I'm not really looking to play him this week regardless. For the Eels, Nothing going on here either. Ryan Madison has been named despite, I believe, suffering broken ribs or something like that. So not sure if he will play, but they had a really good game against the Panthers. So I also wouldn't be looking to make too many changes there. Beyond that, Bulldogs and Dolphins. For the Bulldogs, no changes for them except for Jamin Salmon returning and Lipoi Hopoi. I definitely pronounce that wrong every time, but he drops out. Again, not Supercoach relevant. For the Dolphins, there's also nothing going on there. So let's move over to the Cowboys and the Raiders. Cowboys, big, not so much Supercoach implication, but big just change for the side in general. Jake Clifford has been named to start at halfback with Chad Townsend actually dropped from this one, which I thought is actually interesting. I think Townsend has been pretty unfairly criticised this season. I thought last week he was quite poor in defence. The week before that, I thought he was quite good. I know it's a really interesting change to make so close to finals, and being so highly placed in the ladders at the moment for the Cowboys. Have to see if it really pays dividends, but yeah, that's sort of about it there. Jeremiah Nanai also dropped out with a head knock, so Kilikefu Finifuiaki starts at second row. For the Raiders, Adam Cook has gone into 5'8" once again. Ethan Strange into the centres. Sebastian Chris onto the wing. All of those changes just for Jordan Rapiner to drop out with, I believe, a head knock there as well. But yeah, interesting to see Ethan Strange get a start at centre. The sad thing about this for me is you look down to the reserves and there's still no Mitch Henderson name. So hopefully one day we'll see him there and get a debut. Probably won't be this season. I'm hoping next season for Mitch because he's been absolutely killing it for the Raiders in the New South Wales Cup. So a bit of a shame there, but yeah, not too much Supercoach relevance for those two sides at the moment. For the Tigers, nothing really going on here either. Alex Seyfarth starts at second row with Ruben Porter dropping all the way to the reserves, which I thought was a bit of an interesting one. But again, not too Supercoach relevant. The other one, Luke Lauali'i, starting on the wing for Solomon. Yeah, Alamalo. That's it. Not Fatape. Alamalo drops out. For the Rabbitohs, not a massive amount here. The big interesting one is Keon finally getting moved back to second row. He'd been getting rested a few times in the last couple of weeks, only averaging around that 55 to sort of 60-minute mark instead of the 80 he was playing for the rest of the season. So I don't know, I think maybe it just got a bit too tough on his body. They were asking a lot from Keon, to be fair. To me, he's still a better second rower. I think this will be good for the Rabbitohs going forward, but how that, adds up to Supercoach is a bit interesting. Ideally, Keon at lock forward 80 minutes is the best option, but now back on an edge, you'd presume he does play 80 again, which is probably better than the 55 to 60 he's been playing at lock the last couple of weeks. So if you're a Keon owner, I'd definitely still be holding, especially against this Tigers matchup. He probably crosses for a try. Talis Duncan starts at second row for the other second rower, and Cameron Murray moves back to lock forward. Not a whole lot there on their bench that's really Supercoach relevant. Dragons and Titans up next. For the Dragons, not a whole lot I'm seeing here. That's really changed. Jack Bird finds his way onto the bench with, I believe it's Toby Couchman coming back from suspension as well. Raymond Faitala-Mariner, the man to drop out, which is quite interesting. I thought he's been having a pretty decent season, Faitala-Mariner, but yeah, there you go. For the Titans, not really much here. Brian Kelly does come back into the centres after allegedly missing last week with a sickness. AJ Brimson goes back to jersey 14 on the bench, so interesting stuff there. The only other thing of note, Beau Fermor named at 18th man as he nears a return from injury, which I would love as an owner, but we'll have to wait and see if that one comes to fruition. It's just a sort of wait and see on that one. Beyond that, Sharks and the Knights, I believe they close out the round. Yes, Sharkies and Knights close out the round. For the Sharks, they've named an unchanged 17 from the team that absolutely demolished the Titans last week. And for the Knights, Dylan Lucas, he comes back in to start at centre with Christian Mapapalangi dropping out of the side. So that is all of the team list changes. Let's get into trade talks. Now, once again, we kick things off by looking at the most traded in and traded out players of round 24. So the most traded in, Zach Lomax, currently sitting at almost 7% of trades. Really interesting one. He is someone that I am very much looking at for For my Reece Walsh replacement, I can't afford Tedesco. I would love more than anything to do Tedesco, but I can't do it in one hit, and I'm really worried about using both of my last two trades like this far out from the end of the season, because if things go wrong, especially my hooker position, with Jake Simpkin presumably not going to work his way back into the side, and Harry Grant, you'd assume, would get a rest at some point, I will have no hooker, which wouldn't be the end of the world because I've got a lot of depth in the rest of my side where I could get an AE, and they're probably going to be a pretty good AE. But I'm still quite worried about that. I would love James Tedesco this week, but instead I have been keen on Zach Lomax for a couple of weeks, really close to pulling a trade on him last week if Dom Young was going to be out longer term. Thankfully, Dom Young is back this week for the Roosters. But it means I'm probably going to bring in Zach Lomax with one trade and go Reece Walsh down to him, leaves me with one trade for the back end of the season, which hopefully I can just use in like round 27 when carnage happens, and I can just bring in just the best player of that week. It does mean I'll be playing Ruben Garrick or Kale Ito at fullback as my second fullback behind Kalen Ponga, which, isn't the end of the world. Ideally, as I said, you want the two gun hookers, which are usually your Trebojeviches, your Pongas. For me, it was a Reece Walsh, your Tedesco. There's a lot of good options. I don't think necessarily playing Kale Ito or Ruben Garrick fullback is a bad thing, though, because there are a lot of great winger options, which are Zach Lomax is very much one of those at a decent price point now. Good sort of draw to come. So really like the trade-in of him for a lot of players. Kalen Ponga, the second most traded in, is a little bit more interesting because presumably, unless it's a Reece Walsh to him, that makes sense. I don't know who else you're sort of trading to him, maybe Drinkwaters or whatnot, but he does versus the Sharkies this week. It's not a really easy matchup. You could probably go next week, but if you're trading anyone that's a Tedesco or Trebojevic to him, who are the two best fullbacks in Supercoach, I don't like the Kalen Ponga trade-in. I'm happy to go him. I went him last week, and I always plan to go him as the pod route to those two players in Tedesco Trebojevic, but I'd give anything to own either of those two players, and along with Kalen Ponga. So Ponga's second most traded in is interesting. Just depends on who you're bringing out for him. But yeah, definitely wouldn't be trading out a Trebojevic or a Tedesco for them. Angus Crichton, next most traded in, speaks for itself. Get him in after their bye. Tedesco, the fourth most traded in, and Trebojevic, the fifth most traded in. So lots of fullbacks on this list, the three best options for the run home. Of course, you can only own two of those three best options, so take your pick, really. I assume people are selling Walsh or selling Drinkwaters or whatnot. And in fairness, I would sell any other fullback to own those three. I own Ponga, and I'd love to sell Walsh to Tedesco in one hit. I cannot do it. I haven't ruled out doing both of my last two trades to bring him in, though, Tedesco, simply because I'm in a head-to-head matchup that I really, really want to win this week. I'm very much a more overall focused player than I am head-to-head, which is why I don't want to use my last two trades. But at the same time, I really want to win this head-to-head, and I believe in the depth of my side to last. So we'll have to have a look at that when we get to my trades. But those are the top five most traded in. Some of the other notables, lots of Roosters. So Joey Manu in sixth, Sam Walker in eighth. Makes sense. Roosters have a great draw. I'd be bringing them in. I'm not massive on Joey Manu. I don't really get around him at centre. But he is at a really good price point, so I don't hate that. Let's move over to the most traded out players. Reece Walsh and Scott Drinkwater lead the way. Yeah, there you go. So the two men we sort of mentioned for those three most traded in fullbacks. It just makes sense. Walshy, he's injured anyway and on the bye, so makes sense to move him on. And Scotty Drinkwater, a decent matchup this week against Canberra, but then he also has the bye and a pretty hard draw to come from then. So if you want to move him on, I don't begrudge you for moving him on to the players that we just mentioned. In fact, if you move him on to a Kalen Ponga, you even make money. So good sort of stuff there. Haas, the next most traded out. Yeah, if you still owned Haas, get rid of him. Greg Marju, the fourth most traded out, does not make sense to me, though, because Knights still have a really good run home. He's still scoring 38 to 40 points in base every week, which is crazy. He's got to find some attacking stats. He's at 530k, so he's not massively, doesn't have a massive price point that you can move him on. He's not so high in value that you can just offload him. So I don't like that sell. Ronaldo Mulatalo, next most sold, albeit with only 949 people trading him. He's been named on the extended bench this week for the Sharkies, so I don't know. I'd probably keep an eye on that one. If you held him this far, I'd probably look to hold him for the back end of this season. Let's get into the pod buys before we do my team. Oh, we haven't got them ready. Here we go. Best buys, round 24, point of difference players. Starting with Daly Cherry Evans. Once again, guys, if you're not watching on the YouTube, if you're just listening listening in on an audio platform, head over to the Instagram at Chip and Chase Podcast. You can see these graphics, and they will definitely help you with making your trades in the future. But let's get stuck into it. DCE is our number one player. With the season drawing to a close, pod players will be more important than ever to make moves, and DCE should prove to be one of the best at it, as he was last season. The Seagulls have a great end of season draw and will look to cement a place in finals, which means restings are highly unlikely. DCE could be your man. He was someone I was looking at a couple weeks ago. I was going to potentially go him over Nathan Cleary, which I'm glad I didn't, but I still really like the Seagulls' end of draw. I like how he finished the season last season. As I said, he's not really going to get rested. I don't see a world where they are, because it's such a tight, close competition. And I think the Seagulls are still going to be wanting to really just put their, just really build their game coming into finals, because they haven't played in a couple seasons. So I don't see him getting rested. 6% owned. All the stats up on screen. So, yeah, do with that what you will. But I like Daly Cherry Evans as a pod buy. Let's look at our next player, Clint Gutherson. This one mainly goes out to the Reece Walsh owners out there looking for a pod buy to replace him without going near the highly owned Turbo and Teddy. Everyone has ignored Eels players for obvious reasons this season, but Gutho has quietly been going about his business, averaging 68 points per game for the season. The Eels have seemingly found some decent form and have a good draw to come, and with the goal kicking as well, I think he's a fantastic pod option at fullback. We mentioned the 68 points per game season average, but he's also coming off a 3-round average of 87 points with 2 tons in his last 2 games. -2 break even, sub 700k, so easy move down from a Reece Walsh or even a Scott Drinkwater. It's different. I still think Tedesco and Turbo are the best, and I still think they are just far and away the best. So it's really hard to anti-pod them, especially both of them like I'm currently doing. But I really do like what Gutho does here. I like him with the goal kicking. I like their draw. They do have Roosters this week, which is a bit tough, but he's pretty solid in base. And, if the Eels are going to find some attacking stats, it's probably going to be off the back of Gutho anyway. So do with that what you will. But, yeah, definitely a really good option for a pod buy this week. Let's move into our last player, and there's not much to say here that isn't really shown in the stats, but we have Jacob Preston. He's safe as houses with a really good upside and a good end of season draw, so just, get amongst him. You can see it all up on screen. 45 in base is pretty ridiculous, 3% owned. Bulldogs, I don't know if they're really going to rest players this season. I just don't think they want to, even if they, they're pretty cemented now. I don't think they will rest players. I think they're just in a really good spot regardless. So I like Jacob Preston as my last pod buy. Once again, if you are considering him, this is all up on screen. Do with the information what you will. There's only so much I can say. It's the sort of stats that I include in these graphics that are much more important when you look at buying a player. So give them a look. And as I said, if you're listening on an audio platform, up on the Instagram to give it a look yourself. Let's go into my trade. So we mentioned, wanting Tedesco. I am quite low in the funds department, so if I move Reece Walsh on, I still only have $779k to spend, which means I'm $90,000 off a straight swap to Tedesco. Gutting. I don't want Trebojevic. I'm just scared of, I don't know. He's always, every time I've owned him, he's gotten injured. So if I was to go to someone, it would be Tedesco. Can't do Reece Walsh to him in one trade. The other thing I was thinking is, good draw like for this game for the Cowboys, but then, it gets a bit tougher with the buy and stuff beyond that. Could sell him to Zach Lomax to free up money, and then Reece Walsh to Tedesco. But guess what? It leaves me 4,200 short, which is gutting. So I can't do those two as my last 2 trades. We mentioned hooker being a problem position for me if if I run out of trades and Harry Grant gets rested. So is there a way I can sell a Jake Simpkin and a Reece Walsh to a James Tedesco? Let's toy around with that. Tedesco comes in at fullback. We then have 223,000 to spend. So essentially you're looking at a bottom dollar or enough regardless, which, yeah, doesn't really defeats the purpose of really doing it. I could do it. He's enough that has value. It doesn't really change anything. I could bring in a Jaden Beryl as well. Now, the scary thing about bringing in a Jaden Beryl is then I do have an AE nightmare. So, yeah, I don't really want to do Jaden Beryl. And then you're just looking at bringing in Nuffs again, and then there's just, yeah, not a whole lot of value in that. The other thing I was thinking is, okay, well, how about I get my hooker to be whoever Harry Grant's backup is. So if Harry Grant is rested, I will have a hooker because it has to be the person who plays for Harry Grant, which is something I really like doing at hooker. Problem is, if you guys didn't know, Bronson Garlick, who would probably start at hooker, I'd assume he'd get the gig over Tyron Wishart, who's just, so much more adept as a bench. Bronson Garlick had a great run of form earlier in the season. So he is 314k. In fact, he's more expensive than Jake Simpkin, and I still can't do it. So can't do my last two trades there. I could, do a Jaden Campbell down to a Cameron Munster, which frees up a lot of cash, and do it that way. But it's all for just James Tedesco, essentially. I don't really... I'm selling a lot of players I don't want to sell just to get James Tedesco, who, in fairness, I'd love to own. But I don't want to sell Campbell. I don't really want to sell Holmes. So it doesn't really do much for me. Which means I think I'm locked into my one trade this week. Now, it could change. My head-to-head matchup this week, I'll spoil, is actually Guru, who probably doesn't watch these podcasts. So it's not like he's going to be paying attention to what I trade and then reacting to that. But if Guru was to do something, which I haven't seen Beers and Break-Evens yet, I don't know if it's actually uploaded yet. If he was to come out and bring in Zach Lomax, then I need to find something different because we have very similar teams just by chance. Like, he brought in Ramian and stuff, who I've owned all season, which has just been frustrating because that's one of the pod players I wanted to have different. But we have very similar teams to the point where I think our unique players are like Harry Grant compared to Appy Coruscant. At the moment, Reece Walsh compared to Tom Trbojevic, which is terrifying, especially since Walsh is injured. And I think it's Jai Gray compared to Cody Walker, maybe. And Sam Walker compared to Daly Cherry Evans. And I genuinely think out of playing players, that is all we have different. So across the board there, I'm obviously terrified of Trbojevic and not owning him while he does. And as I said, I really want to win this matchup to verse Leaves, who you guys may have seen in the on the page on Instagram with our tips and bets. I want to verse him in the next week of finals, or at least maybe even the grand final if he collects up a win. So it's a pretty important head-to-head matchup for me to win. If Guru was to bring in a Zach Lomax in Beers and Break-Evens, or if he said he is going to, it gives me another unique player, which it doesn't give me a unique player. It gives us another player that we've got the same. And I really need unique players to beat him. At the moment, I'm thinking of the Zach Lomax trade. So as I said, we go Reece Walsh out. We move Ruben Garrick or whatnot down to fullback. And we bring in, where is the boy? Second highest averaging, Zach Lomax. Gives me 117k remaining. So really good for whatever I decide to use my last trade as. But yeah, really wanted to own Zach Lomax. Really happy to do that. I think he can go decently big. Who have the Dragons got again? Titans. So if Titans don't turn up the way they did against the Sharkies, Lomax can go big and it can hopefully just nail the difference that Trbojevic makes. I like my other unique players compared to his. I like having a Harry Grant over at Appy Coruscant, though the matchups this week aren't ideal. I like having a Sam Walker over Daly Cherry Evans. I like having a Jai Gray over a Cody Walker. So I like my other matchups, but it's the difference that Trbojevic makes to whoever my other unique player is that could kill me. And now I don't think the difference between Turbo and Teddy would be huge. In fact, I think Teddy could outplay Turbo. So that would be ideal. And I'd be very confident if I own Tedesco, but I can't. Now, Zach Lomax, I don't think he goes as high as Trbojevic this week, but I think he can go high enough that the rest of my unique players will get the job done. It'll be a close one, but that's what Supercoach is all about. We've got really strong sides at this point of the season, so I'm excited to see that. But I think that's how I'm going to go. Just use the one trade this week and bring in Zach Lomax. Yeah, kills me not owning Tedesco or Trbojevic, especially because next week Trbojevic has Tigers. So even if I do beat Guru and I go through to verse Leaves and he owns Turbo and Tedesco, oh God, and he just, captains Trbojevic against Tigers, I'll probably lose, but hey, that's what Supercoach is all about. So I think we'll use the one trade, but as I said, I might have to pivot if Guru announces on Beers and Breakevens that he's bringing in Lomax, and I will use both trades to bring in James Tedesco. But we'll have to see. For now, we'll record this video, get it published. I'm sure Beers and Breakevens is out by the time I post this, so it's all going to be a bit outdated. But keep in mind, obviously, these are recorded well in advance of posting them. So that is the one trade that we will be looking at doing. Let's move into our sit v starts this week. Now, we welcome back a lot of Roosters players, so they're assumingly going to start for like my entire team. Dominic Young comes into the starting side, that's for sure. Jesus, I might have too much depth here. Josh Curran will start at front row, which means Jack DeBellin, you're out and you're not getting a reserve. Angus Crichton will get a reserve, or, technically should probably start. It doesn't really matter. I don't think I'll be captaining an Angus Crichton, but yeah, we'll have him starting, which means Ola Kawatu gets a reserve. Sam Walker gets a reserve. Ooh, and then, damn, I was really keen on giving Jai Gray a reserve this week, but against the Tigers, but I can't really justify taking one off Sam Walker, Ola Kawatu, or Ruben Garrick, or Kale Ito. So it's a bit of a shame, and I can't really justify starting him over Jaden Campbell against the Dragons either. So bit of a shame to not play Jai Gray here. I was really actually keen on that. But yeah, we'll live with that. I reckon we can work with this. So those are my reserves. We're looking at Ruben Garrick, Kale Ito, Sam Walker, and Homole Olakawatu as my reserves. Let's look at captaincies this week. Now, of course, the big thing that starts us off on the Thursday is the Storm take on the Panthers. So the two best teams in the comp. You can probably still look at vice-captaining players in this one. They are still the best teams and therefore have the best players like Nathan Cleary. But I'm going to be sticking away from it. It's probably going to be a low-scoring, grindy affair. Really good game I'm looking forward to watching, but not so much from a Supercoach perspective. But you could still throw a VC on Cleary if you feel so inclined. I won't be looking to do that. Next game is Manly versus Warriors. It speaks for itself. If you're a Tom Trbojevic owner, it's worth a vice captain or maybe even a captain, even though it's the early Friday game. If you wanted to go for a VC Cleary and then captain Trbojevic, I actually don't hate it at all. If not, he's definitely still worth a massive, massive look in as a vice captain, Tom Trbojevic. I don't own, so it doesn't faze me, and there's no Warriors players you'd look at. You could also look at a Ruben Garrick, which I think I might be looking at for a vice captain this week, just so I can know. Hopefully, if Trbojevic goes insane, I'm hoping, Garrick scores a couple and kicks a few goals. So we'll have to see there. Excuse me. Next game, Roosters and Eels. This is the big one, of course. Tedesco, worth a vice captain or a captain. You can't do both if you're a Tedesco or Trbojevic owner. So if I had to choose one of the two, I think I prefer Tom Trbojevic. I prefer James Tedesco this week against the Eels. Warriors, welcome back, Sean Johnson. I think Warriors have been playing worse footy than the Eels have been recently, but it's a Roosters team fresh off the bye, wanting to stamp their authority. The Warriors took Manly to a draw earlier in the season as well. I think they get up for it. I mean, maybe I'm just hoping. I'm definitely hoping because I need Trbojevic to go poor, but I prefer Tedesco out of the two. Unfortunately, I don't own either, so it doesn't make a difference. Are there any other Roosters options? Sam Walker, definitely a shout. Someone I will be potentially have a look at VCing or captaining. But yeah, definitely like that. Bulldogs and Dolphins up next. Not really any players of note for captaincy in that. North Queensland Cowboys and the Raiders. Not much there. You could look at a Valentine Holmes or a Scott Drinkwater, but I don't know. I've just got a weird feel about the Cowboys and the Raiders in that one, so I won't be looking at it. Then Tigers and Rabbitohs. You always want to captain players against the Tigers, but not really when it's the Rabbitohs, to be honest. If there was a Latrell Mitchell back, yeah, he'd be a captain, but he's not. So I won't be looking at anyone in that game. Dragons, Titans up next. Also not really much option there. And then Sharks, Knights, not much option there. However, I think that's where I'm going to put my captain this week. And it's going to be really... No. Am I doing that? No, I probably shouldn't. Should I? I don't know. VC for me is going to be Ruben Garrick, which means he has to start over Kalen Ponga. Actually, you know what? Oh, God, what have I done? I'm not trading Ponga. Let's just change that so Ruben Garrick... Cal Iro can be my fullback this week, and Ruben Garrick, you can start over... Oh, no, who have the Dragons got? Yeah, okay, I'll do that instead. I was going to, admittedly, captain Jesse Ramian in the last game of the round. I'm not going to anymore. He would be on Dylan Lucas's side, which is sort of ideal. And he has massive base, which I love. But I think I'm instead going to go for Zach Lomax as my captain, bring him into the side and captain him. But I will be giving the vice captain to Ruben Garrick. So we're going to start Ruben over Jesse Ramian this week. So captain Zach Lomax and vice captain Ruben Garrick. Both of them in my centre wing. How would we do it from here? Where would I captain someone? It'd have to be in the second row. So who would I lose a reserve from? Cal Iro, maybe? Yeah, maybe a Cal Iro or a Homole Olakawatu. No, not an Olakawatu. I don't know. We'll have to look at that. But yeah, vice captain for me this week, Ruben Garrick, and captain Zach Lomax for me. And that sort of wraps us up, guys. As I said, sorry about the quick one. I'm sure you guys didn't want to hear me ramble too much anyway. But yeah, quite under the weather. A lot on today. So we'll wrap it up here. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I'll see you guys next time.